For years, Israel and Iran have been engaged in a tense, undeclared conflict, a shadow war fought through proxies, cyber attacks, and covert operations. But in recent days, this simmering hostility has boiled over into direct military confrontation. The current escalation began 8 days ago, marking a dangerous new phase in their long-standing animosity. The immediate trigger appears to be a series of targeted actions, which have now spiraled into an open exchange of fire. This is not a battle over a piece of land, but a conflict rooted in deep ideological divides, regional power struggles, and long-held fears about each other's military and nuclear ambitions. The world is now watching as two of the Middle East's most powerful nations trade blows directly, a scenario long feared by international observers. The reasons behind this fight are complex and deeply entrenched. For Israel, the primary concern has always been Iran's nuclear program, which it views as an existential threat. Israeli leaders have repeatedly stated they will not allow Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. They also point to Iran's support for militant groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in Gaza, which have fought wars with Israel. From Iran's perspective, Israel is seen as an illegitimate state and an extension of Western influence in the region. Iranian leaders accuse Israel of aggression, including the targeted killing of its scientists and sabotage of its nuclear facilities, forcing their hand into a more direct and forceful response to what they describe as acts of war. The recent escalation saw Israel launch a significant air campaign, with its air force confirming that over 60 warplanes have been involved. The strikes have targeted what Israel describes as military infrastructure across western and central Iran. These targets have included missile production sites and facilities linked to Iran's nuclear research agency, known as SPND. The attacks have reached the outskirts of the capital, Tehran, demonstrating a clear intent to inflict significant damage on Iran's strategic capabilities. Israel's government has framed these actions as defensive, aimed at neutralizing threats before they can be used against its population, a preemptive strategy it has employed in the past. In response, Iran has not hesitated to retaliate. It has launched waves of missiles aimed at Israeli cities, bringing the conflict directly to the Israeli home front. Sirens have wailed in cities like Beersheba, where a technology park was hit. The retaliatory strikes are a show of force from Tehran, designed to prove that it can and will strike back against any aggression. This cycle of attack and counterattack has created a volatile situation where any single event could trigger a much larger, all-out war. Each side feels compelled to respond to the other's actions, creating a dangerous momentum that diplomats are now desperately trying to halt before it consumes the entire region. The consequences of this conflict are being felt most acutely by ordinary people in both Israel and Iran. In Israel, the constant threat of missile attacks has shattered the sense of security. In an attack on the southern city of Beersheba, an Iranian missile struck near the Soroka Medical Center, a major hospital, causing damage to the building and injuring at least 7 people. The psychological toll is immense, as families are forced to rush to bomb shelters with little warning. The closure of Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion Airport has stranded thousands, adding to the chaos and anxiety. Daily life has been fundamentally disrupted, replaced by a new reality governed by air raid sirens and the fear of what the next moment might bring. In Iran, the impact is equally severe, if not more widespread. Israeli airstrikes have damaged at least 5 hospitals, complicating an already strained healthcare system. Citizens in major cities, especially Tehran, are living under a dual threat: the danger from the skies and growing internal pressures. Reports describe widespread internet blackouts and cyber attacks, which disrupt communication and add to a sense of isolation. Shortages of essential goods are becoming more common, and some families with the means to do so have begun to flee the capital, seeking safety in more rural areas. The conflict is not just a distant news story, it is a terrifying reality that has invaded every aspect of their lives. Amid the chaos, dissent and nationalistic fervor are both on the rise. In Tehran and other Iranian cities, hundreds of thousands of people have taken to the streets following Friday prayers to protest against Israel. These state-sanctioned rallies are filled with anti-Israeli and anti-American slogans, portraying a nation unified in defiance. However, beneath this curated image of unity lies a complex reality. The government is carefully controlling the narrative through state media, downplaying the extent of the damage from Israeli strikes while amplifying news of its own military successes. This tight control on information makes it difficult to gauge the true extent of public opinion, which is likely a mix of genuine anger, fear, and frustration. For civilians on both sides, the future is uncertain and fraught with danger. The conflict has brought with it a campaign of targeted assassinations, adding a chilling personal dimension to the state-level violence. Israel claims to have killed 9 Iranian nuclear scientists since the fighting began, a claim Iran has not fully confirmed but has acknowledged some deaths. There are also unconfirmed reports of senior officials being targeted. This strategy raises profound questions about the rules of engagement and the safety of individuals deemed a threat. For families in both nations, the war is no longer an abstract concept but a deeply personal crisis that threatens their homes, their safety, and their very lives. The conflict has brought the world's focus squarely onto Iran's nuclear program, a long-standing point of international contention. Israel has taken the unprecedented step of directly attacking multiple Iranian nuclear facilities. These include the well-known enrichment sites at Natanz and Fordow, as well as the Khandab heavy water research reactor in Iraq. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the UN's nuclear watchdog, has confirmed that key buildings at the Khandab site were damaged. While the IAEA has thankfully reported no signs of a radiological leak, noting the reactor was still under construction and not yet fueled, the attacks represent a significant escalation. Striking nuclear sites, even those under construction, carries immense risks. These attacks have triggered alarm bells across the international community, raising serious questions about breaches of international law. Saudi Arabia's nuclear regulatory body, for instance, has publicly stated that targeting civilian nuclear facilities is a clear violation of established global norms and treaties. Such actions set a dangerous precedent, potentially normalizing attacks on sensitive sites and risking environmental catastrophe. Russia and China, 2 major world powers, have also condemned Israel's actions as a breach of international law, calling for an immediate cessation of hostilities. The strikes have not only heightened regional tensions, but have also deepened geopolitical divides, complicating any efforts to find a peaceful resolution. In the face of this escalating crisis, a flurry of diplomatic activity is underway in Geneva, Switzerland. The city, long a hub for international peacemaking, is hosting urgent talks between Iran's foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, and his counterparts from France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. The primary goal of these discussions is to find a diplomatic off-ramp, a way to de-escalate the military conflict and address the underlying issues related to Iran's nuclear program. European diplomats are reportedly working against the clock, believing there is only a narrow 2-week window to broker a deal before the situation spirals completely out of control. The stakes could not be higher. However, the path to a diplomatic solution is fraught with obstacles. Iran has made its position clear. It will not engage in any negotiations with the United States until Israel's military strikes come to a complete halt. This precondition places immense pressure on Washington and its European allies. Meanwhile, other countries are scrambling to protect their citizens caught in the crossfire. The United Kingdom is trying to arrange charter flights to evacuate its nationals from Israel, a difficult task with the main airport closed. Nations including China, Japan, Australia, India, and France are also actively working to get their citizens out of both Israel and Iran, a sign of how seriously the world views the potential for a wider, more devastating war. As Israel and Iran exchange fire, the United States finds itself in a pivotal position, with its next move being closely watched by the entire world. The White House has announced that President Donald Trump will make a decision within the next 2 weeks on whether the U.S. will join Israel in its military campaign against Iran. This announcement came with a caveat, citing a chance of negotiation, suggesting that the door to diplomacy is not yet fully closed. However, reports indicate that President Trump has already approved potential strike plans, including a highly sensitive attack on Iran's fortified underground facility at Fordow. The U.S. has so far refrained from pressuring Israel to stop its attacks, leaving its allies and adversaries uncertain of its ultimate intentions. The conflict's shockwaves are also spreading across the wider Middle East, threatening to ignite other regional flashpoints. Hezbollah's Deputy Secretary General Naim Qassem has warned that any threat to Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, would be seen as an act of aggression against all people in the region. More concretely, an Iran-backed militia in Iraq has threatened to blockade the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. These are two of the world's most critical maritime choke points for global oil supplies. Any disruption there would have immediate and severe consequences for the global economy, demonstrating how quickly a bilateral conflict can escalate into a worldwide crisis. In the capitals of both warring nations, controlling the flow of information has become a critical part of the war effort. In Israel, there is growing pressure from far-right ministers on foreign media outlets to comply with strict military censorship, particularly concerning the locations of missile impacts. Journalists have been told they must submit their footage for review before broadcast, a measure aimed at preventing panic and concealing strategic vulnerabilities. Similarly, in Iran, state media is under tight government control. The official narrative is one of national unity and resilience, focusing on successful military retaliations while carefully managing information about the damage and casualties suffered at home, making an independent assessment of the situation incredibly difficult. Amid the drumbeat of war, the hope for peace rests on the fragile negotiations taking place in Geneva and the calculations being made in Washington. The international community is urging both sides to step back from the brink, emphasizing that there is no military solution to this deep-seated conflict. The importance of dialogue and negotiation cannot be overstated. The coming days will be critical in determining whether leaders can find the political will to de-escalate and pursue a path of peace. The alternative is a devastating, full-scale war that would not only spell catastrophe for the people of Israel and Iran, but would also destabilize the entire region and have profound implications for the rest of the world. As the missiles fly and diplomats scramble, a parallel battle rages on, the struggle over truth, perception, and the moral high ground. In a recent statement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused Iran of bombing children, condemning the attacks as inhumane and unacceptable. His words reverberated across international media, painting a stark picture of Iranian aggression. Yet critics and global observers were quick to point out the ongoing Israeli military operations in Gaza, where many children have also been killed or injured. Images of devastated neighborhoods, grieving families, and wounded children have flooded social media, fueling outrage and sorrow far beyond the region's borders. This war of words and images has sparked heated debate around the world, with each side presenting its own narrative of victimhood and justification. International organizations and humanitarian groups have called for accountability and an end to the suffering of civilians, reminding all parties that the true cost of war is measured in innocent lives lost. As public opinion shifts and hardens, leaders face mounting pressure, not just from their adversaries, but from their own citizens and the global community. In the end, the hearts and minds of millions may prove as decisive as any battlefield victory, shaping the future of the conflict and the fragile hopes for peace.